Hi everyone, welcome to Point Blank Music School here in London. I'm Marcus Barnes and today we have a very special masterclass with Jozif. He's going to be breaking down one of his tracks from the Balance CD that he's got out right now. So let's go and do this thing. How you doing, Jozif?
I'm all right, thank you, yeah.
How's everything going at the moment?
It's going all right now we've got the computer working. There's a little bit of a hairy moment there, but yeah, no, fine, thank you.
Can you tell me a little bit about the track before you start breaking it down for us?
Yeah, of course. Basically, with the new Balance CD that I just mixed, I wrote 2 records to go on the mix CD, so it wasn't just like a mix CD. It was obviously 2 of my compositions on there as well. And this particular one, there's 2 of them. They're both one's called BTS 3 and one's called BTS 5. Mm-hmm. And this one, BTS 5, is a very, I guess, a typical Jozif-y type record. It's very over-emotional and there's lots of strings and lots of type of rubbish in it. So basically, yeah, I'm going to talk about this one today because there's a lot of stuff going on in it. As you'll probably see if you can, whenever you look at the screen grabs, there's could be a billion different channels on it. So I was going to talk about the BTS 3, but it was so simple that I kind of figured it would probably only take us about 3 minutes to talk about it because it was like a kick and a snap and a bass line.
Wouldn't really make for the best masterclass.
So yeah, exactly. It would have been like the shortest masterclass on the face of the planet. So yeah, I'm going to talk about this one. This is BTS 5. There's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of arrangement in it. There's a lot of processing in it. Unfortunately, on this particular laptop, though, I don't have a lot of the plugins that I actually used for it because Kontakt's not on this machine because I murder Kontakt all the time. It's not on this laptop. But what I have done is I've just bounced down the audio so we can actually hear what's happening. But I've kept all the MIDI files in there.
Oh, sweet.
So we can actually physically see what I played and we can actually have a look at it. And also I took some screen grabs of Kontakt as well, just in case anyone doesn't actually use it. We can actually see what she looks like and how I used it. So. Yeah, that's it. BTS 5. Don't ask me why it's called BTS 5, by the way.
Okay, cool.
I don't even know.
All right. Before we get into it, I just want to let everyone know that Jozif's Balance CD is out right now. It's a brilliant mix, and make sure you pick it up. It's really good. It's got this track that he's breaking down and a load of other great tracks on it. So yeah, make sure you pick it up. Let's crack on.
Okay, right. Well. I don't know whether you want me to play the record first. It's quite a long record, so I don't know whether we can be bothered to sort of sit through it, or I don't know whether you want me to play it to you first.
What do you guys think?
Or I mean, it's up to you. We can listen to it and then we can go through it, or I can just start talking to you about the parts of it. It's totally up to what everyone wants to do. Should I start just going through the parts or play the record? Someone tell me. Play the record first. Someone's shouting at me. Okay, well,
let's do it.
Here we go then. I'll make sure it's not going to blow your eardrums off. it's quite an emotional, stringy type of business. Basically, the whole thing about this record, what I was trying to do, and whether or not I achieved it or not, I don't know. But the whole point of this record was that I wanted something that, for a prolonged period of time, really didn't do a huge great deal. Something that was kind of going to be a bubbling under type of thing, lots of pads, something that's going to be almost holding on to a whole group, a whole bunch of energy, but at the same time not actually releasing it, and almost verging on like, oh, come on. So you know, that kind of feeling when you're playing on the dance floor, someone's going to go, what, there's nothing happening here. Because all the way up until, there's 2 minutes, I think, up until like that 65 mark there, the only thing that's really changing is the bass line. So what I wanted to do is use all these paddy bits to try and make sure that there was something that was keeping the interest to a certain extent, but we're not giving anything away. And then the whole point was, at this point here, from the 97, then just to smash it with something which was like, what on earth is this silly little orchestral, you know, over the topness. But, and again, that only lasting for, I mean, I can't, whatever it says on there, not even a minute. So from there to wherever it stops, whenever it crashes off, like no time at all. So it's almost like you're waiting for a whole longer amount of time where nothing's really happening, and then something goes, wow, come on, this is this huge orchestral thing. And then after that, it just goes back to kind of that bit. And that's, so there's a new arpeggiator that gets introduced after that, but that's it then. So you go from spending all this time going, come on, get on with it, mate, which is just that, going from that then to this ridiculous stringy thing, which is with all that. So that was the idea. Like I say, whether or not it worked or not is another thing entirely. But as I said before, on this particular laptop, unfortunately, I don't actually have the Kontakt plugin that I use for pretty much everything. Only because I don't know if you use Kontakt. It's such a huge program that it would blow this little thing up. So all I did was bounce down the audio so we can actually listen to it bit by bit. But I've also kept these MIDI parts so we can go through it. But I wanted to just talk about the layers is the main thing, because I don't know if you can hear it or not in here, but there's a lot of layers. Yeah. I remember listening to this interview that Sasha did eons and eons ago about the way that he DJ'd and the way that he sort of approached his production, which was using lots and lots and lots and lots of layers to try and build energy and to try and build some type of vibe and to try and build, you know, the ethos of the track, the sound. So this is one of those records where you can see there's I mean, there's like this kick and there's this drums and this percussion here, and then everything underneath there, the bleep, the bell, the bed, everything under there is a musical part. So the whole point of me trying to get all this together was get it all in there, write all the different parts, and then find the best place to put them. Because if you unmuted all those tracks and you'd left them in there, I mean, the frequency range would be bonkers. Yeah. You'd have no room for anything. And in the end, it would just be like, mate, this is driving me mental. There's too many sounds fighting for the same position. So I always, whenever I'm doing this type of record, when I'm writing this type of very layery, music-y type thing, what I tend to do is overwrite all the time. I always just keep going. I write another part and I'll hear sort of a stringy bit or a pad or a bell, and I think, oh, that's good. I might think of something else, and I'll just write another part. Because when it comes to doing the arrangement, I kind of quite like the idea of having too much stuff. So you get to that thing when you come to the arrangement bit and you kind of go, oh, I really like that bell bit. Well, actually, maybe it's not as good as what I thought it was, so we'll put it to one side, either bin it or put it to one side like I've started doing only recently, put it to one side for maybe another project or another idea. But I always find it's better to have too much stuff, so then you have this huge palette in front of you when you come, particularly with a record like this anyway. I mean, like I said, the other record, if we get time, maybe I'll show you the BTS 3 at the end, because it's just like the total opposite to this record. But with something like this anyway, I always find it's great to have loads of different textures and different sounds, because it's all kind of going in the same direction. It's all very music-y, it's all very padding, there's bellies bits. So Yeah, and the other thing what I wanted to say actually just before we go on to listening to the parts was when I come to be writing these really music-y bits, well actually it's probably the same for my drums as well now I come to think about it. I tend not to process them too heavy when I write them. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me, thanks Tiger. I tend not to process them too hard when they're in the MIDI phase. What I tend to do is write them all first, get them to a point where I think, yeah, that's kind of cool. And only at the end, then when I either bounce it down to audio, when I'm totally happy with it, then I'll start really processing it with effects and stuff. Because particularly with a record like this anyway, if this was all still written in MIDI, even my studio computer at home would struggle for the CPU to run it all. So there's going to come a time when you're going to have to start bouncing stuff down to audio because your CPU simply wouldn't be able to run it. So I literally, when it's in MIDI format, I hardly really ever process it at all. It's only when 1000%, it's like, right, okay, that's the bit and that all works and I start bouncing it. Then I'll bounce it down to audio and then I'll start processing it later. Because I think sometimes what can happen is if you process it and then you bounce it down to audio and then you don't like the sound of it, or the EQ isn't right, or if you've got a big reverb on it and you start chopping it up, then you're scuppered because you're like, oh, I've already processed it. And then you have to go back and it's just a pain in the ass. So, yeah, that's what I always do. So there was, and I wonder if I can just skip to the other project quickly because there's another thing here I want to just show you, which has just got all the sounds in it unmuted, so we don't have to go through this thing. I wonder if this might actually blow the computer up. Everyone has to cross their fingers at this point, okay? Because this one. So this is a classic example. You can see now that there's a whole lot of plugins here that actually don't work. I'm not sure if this is gonna. Do I have to do this thingy? I have to do this bit. Are we all right? Am I good? No, am I fine? Oh, good. Okay. This is the same record, but it's just everything unmuted with no automation in it, so it's probably easier for us to look at. So going back to the layers thing, which I wanted to talk about, is the big main stringy bit, which is the really over the top bit, which sounds like this. And then it goes. See that obviously the audio obviously looks like a piece of audio, but the MIDI part actually looks like this. So it's not like rocket surgery. I know it looks a bit weird because there's loads of little dots in it, but it's just a very simple repeating pattern. But then obviously there's this little key change there, which gives it that depth. But what I use for this, which I was saying before about Kontakt, is, I don't know, does any of you guys use Kontakt? No. Kontakt, you use Kontakt? It is amazing. I love Kontakt. It's fantastic, but it's very, very heavy. But there's one of the libraries that I use on Kontakt is this thing here, which is this Session Strings Pro. Which is a huge bank of string sounds, and it's great. You can see my really silly Alicia Keys piano plug in there. I've been outed as an Alicia Keys fan. It's quite good actually, that. But yeah, so I use that for all the stringy sounds because actually we can play, I've just had a thought, we can play this in the EX24, the same sound. It's gonna work. Yeah, so this is the same, this is the MIDI part, but in the EXS24. So you can kind of see it's kind of like that thing, really. But actually, we can look at the part. So
it's a bit craft work at the end.
Yeah, maybe that's another record. God, if I've only known that, I could have written a different track. So yeah, so this I use that Kontakt for so much stuff because it's, like I said, the sounds are really great. You can do a lot of layering. I know my way around it, which is helpful. I mean, I'm pretty certain if I was probably proficient on the XS24, I could probably get it out. But the sounds on that Kontakt Session Strings are absolutely fantastic.
It's like it was made for you.
I know, it's quite. They should have given it to me for free, really. But all of this, the majority of the sounds on this record, the musical sounds anyway, actually no, in fact the drums are actually done it as well, are all done on Kontakt. The only thing that isn't done on Kontakt is this little R3 sound, which is part of the bed, which is done on my Korg R3 little outboard keyboard, which I kind of bought and thought this is going to be a really, really good idea because it's like really easy to play and there's a grid arpeggiator on and there's loads of really cool things on it, and I probably only use it for things like this, which is. And that's, that's how much I've got out of it in probably 2 years. I've literally gone, oh, I know, and that's it. So that was good, really 600 quid well spent. But anyway, so what I wanted just to play you was, this might sound a bit convoluted because the levels aren't necessarily right, but I want to just go through the layers to show you how many layers there are on it and how it kind of makes up the sound, basically. So there's this little bell sound here. Again, this is out of Kontakt. This is in one of the synths. I think it's called Carillion. There's a little paddy thing here, which is a string. There's another pad there. It's another pad. This is a arpeggiator, which we'll play in a minute because that comes in at the end. Where's the other bed? Let's just have a quick look. I can't remember where everything is. Hold on. Let's just play it from there. So there's another string bed there. So you can hear, I mean, even if you just solo that.
It gives it so much depth,
There
man.
is so much stuff in it, but again, like I said before, it's a case of trying to get all of these sounds to talk to each other at the same time, because what can all too often happen is, someone was telling me about this a long time ago about bottom end stuff. They were saying, you know, you've got to be careful not to muddy it because there's no point after like 70 or 80 hertz, you're just going to lose space, particularly if you're putting stuff on vinyl. You know, you're losing it. But also what I found is that, is that the same can be said for, you know, all the stuff in the mids and the tops, because I don't know if you guys use this. This is something I use all the time. I use it both on my output and on the channels. Is the analyzer tool on your EQ, which is fantastic for me because it just basically tells you where everything is happening. So without that on, you can kind of go, well, I can kind of hear it, it's just fine. But if you're using headphones, or if you're in someone else's studio or whatever, or if you don't know, this tool is absolutely fantastic, because then it gives you that ability to kind of go, well, I can actually see maybe that I need actually more here. And when you start layering layers like this, and you start putting the EQs together, then you can then start to see what's actually fighting. Because sometimes, I mean, unless you're in the most amazing studio on the face of the planet,
that's it.
You're never going to know until you go and play at Fabric and you go, oh, crikey, Moses. All you can hear is, and you're like, you know. So as technical as this sounds and as unfortunate as I find it, it's a necessity sometimes to use your eyes and use the technical ability rather than just go, oh, it kind of sounds all right to me, so I'm not going to make it different. So sometimes it's really good to use things like this, the meter. In fact, there's a lot of the metering aspects that are in Logic, you know, which are really, really useful. So, yeah, like I say, there's a lot of stuff here which, I mean, if you listen to this string bed, for example, even though it's really heavily affected and it's, you know, it's very gentle and lovely, if you listen to this pad, what is that one? Well, that's actually a sweepy pad. It might be one of these pads is very, very similar. See that one? See, that one is very, very similar, but it's just got that one's got such a huge effect on it that when I use this bed to come in to the other main string line, that bed then comes out. So, like I say, with a record like this, it is just about trying to get everything to talk to each other, which, you know, can sometimes be difficult. Which is why this record probably took me about 1,000 years to actually do, and about 1,000 versions. I'm not sure if I can show you how many versions I've got on here. This is on this version, on this machine. I think I've got, you know, there's that many versions on this machine, and that's only the versions that I put over here today. So yes, this is the stringy bits. Also, what I was going to tell you about was what are the hotkeys on here. So there's a plucky thing on here. You can see that I obviously named my tracks. They're really clever the way I name them. So, that sounds like a pluck, so I'm going to use that. Or the doofy dinker swirly one. You know, I'm not very technical. There's this is something again which I wanted to talk about Kontakt, and I know I sound like I'm sponsored by Kontakt today, but there is something really useful going back to this session strings thing on Kontakt. There is a thingy on here, which is called the animator, which is why I've screen grabbed it here so you can see it. This animator is almost like, well, it actually is an arpeggiator for the strings. So there's a lot of stuff in here that you can hear it going do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do, which is, there's this plucky bit. Is it? No, it would help if I actually did the right bit. We'll get there in the end, sorry. Right, which is what this sounds like. So this particular part, this staccato part, was just the same note that I used for the bed, or the same chord that I used for the bed. But because I was getting to a point where we had so many of these pad layers, and it was all very elongated and you know, well, long. I wanted something to sort of chop it up, and that's what this bit was for, to give it the a little bit of a stab, and then talk it with the other bit, because you just get that bit to play on the other bit. So I think, so again, it's just giving it that character. So if we put, so once we start putting them together, they start to all kind of talk to each other. Let's see a little bit. And there's our big main bit over the top, which then obviously sounds like this, which would be. Let's just turn this. Oops. Turn this up. So this is the main riff. Then this is coming over the top. So that's how it all starts to kind of come together. But like I say, at the risk of repeating myself, it's just about trying to get it all to come and talk together, which is a drama, as you can see. So yeah, that's the first bit. I don't know if anyone has wanted to talk to me or ask me anything about Kontakt or strings, or whether I just banged on a little bit too long about that bit. But that's kind of what this record is actually about.
Was there like a specific thing that really inspired this track, or was it just a case of?
I started with the strings on this record. Nothing really inspired it. To be honest with you, I never kind of really do that with anything. I mean, unless I'm doing a remix or there's an edit, it's very, very rare that I'll sort of sit down and go, oh yeah, I really, really have to do this. Because it's usually, with me, it's kind of like whenever I sit, because I just sit every single day, unless I'm traveling, it's like every day I just sit in the studio.
You're always playing around, aren't you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's like, and for me, what I kind of quite like about writing music is you talk to different people and different people say different things. You know, some producers will say, you know, I sit down and I'll make a beat and then I'll go from there. And other people will say, well, you know, I don't really start with anything. I'm one of those people that doesn't start with anything. I just kind of go, oh, I think this actually. Because I never sit down and actually write a record because I have to write a record. You know, what frightens me the most is someone sort of says, well, I have to put a record out every single month. You know, I have to write a record. I'm a bit like, oh, it frightens me, and I think I'm probably totally incapable of actually doing it. So with me, I just sit down and I started, I think originally, if I remember correctly, I started messing around with this session strings thing because I probably only just got it or something like that, and I started to faff around with it, and I went, oh, this is actually, and I started with that, you know, with that stringy bit, and then it turned into, you know, what it is now. But I never really have a plan, really. I probably should at some point. No, might be a good idea to actually.
You seem to be doing well off the way that you work anyway. I mean, like, most of the stuff that you've had out has been like really on point, you know, and it's kind of like it has a character to it that's all you.
Yeah, I think probably a lot of people's music does have a certain character, you know, for them, but it just depends who they actually are. I mean, there are some people that kind of write the same record over and over and over again, or their records sound like other people's, but that's kind of their character, which I think is fine. At the end of the day, you know, writing music and playing music and stuff is just about what you want to do. And if you want to go, do you know what, I want to write a Nick Curly record, then go and write a Nick Curly record. Happy days. If you write in, it's a good Nick Curly record, then I'll probably end up playing it in a nightclub. So I don't think there's a lot of times. I think people can get quite sort of snobby about stuff, and they could probably be like, oh God, well, you know, he's not doing anything new. Well, yeah, realistically, and none of us are really doing anything. None of us are reinventing the wheel. You know what I mean? It's not like, you know, we're Jim Morrison. But anyway. So yeah, this particular one anyway started with this this stringy bit. There was what was I wanted to talk to you about the drums as well, but this is a little bit tricky because you can see here, look, my Kontakt has got a little strikeout on it because, and also there's, actually we might as well talk about the bass since we're here. I don't know if anyone's heard about this ABL2 bass thing. It's by a company called Audio Realism, and I think it's a 303 or is an 808 emulator. It's one of the, I'm not super cool on the names of stuff, unfortunately. It's 303, I'm pretty certain. Emulator, and I think it's like 90 euros, it's like 70 quid. It's
really?
So cheap.
Sweet.
But it sounds amazing. So I use it for loads of stuff when it comes to bass, because you can get like a really great sound out of it. I mean, this is obviously just the audio, but and I don't even process this that much. It's a shame I wonder if I can. Is it on here? No, I can't. It's not on here. But again, with the bass stuff, you can see even on this version that I have, you know, sent this bass through something. Because if you look at my, I know I might be going off a little bit higgledy-piggledy here, but stick with me. When I open my my Logic screen, even on this one, and particularly obviously on my studio machine, is that I have the template set up already.
Yeah.
So like I was saying before about not processing stuff too much early on, what I tend to do is, let's just say we write 3 drum tracks and you're going to go kick, snare, clap, hi-hat and all the rest of it. You get them together, you go, oh, these are quite cool, whether they're pieces of audio or pieces of MIDI, you know, I'll then group them together and put them in this one bus. So the kick will always stay on her own, because to me a kick, I think she just has to do her own thing and let her go. But the drums and the percussion stuff, I kind of quite like the idea of getting them all together. I don't know whether it's because I'm a bit of a control freak. And I like stuff grouped together and nice, which is why you can see everything's like in colours, in groups, in blocks. I'm in my session view of it. I probably spend more time doing that than anything. I was like, oh, it must be blue, you know? Like a complete weirdo. So
There's always got to be a method to the madness.
yeah, when you spend so much time on your own looking at blocks on a screen, I mean, it's going to come out in a little way, you know what I mean? It's like, so, yeah. So, yeah, just talking about the bussing and the grouping of stuff. I mean, I'm probably sure everyone does this, but yeah, with drums and with rhythm stuff, I tend to sort of group stuff together, so it all just kind of has the same kind of texture and the same type of colour for it. I also then with the template that I have these they're just the simple buses for things like, you know, the stereo delay and the reverb, because I mean on this one there's a ring shift. I think it's probably the first time I've ever used that, but particularly the stereo delay and the delay designer is like, I found myself when I first started really getting heavy into Logic about 4 or 5 years ago, that I would be repeating myself over and over and over again. Because I'd be like, oh, actually, do you know what? I really want to just send that to a quick little stereo delay. And I go, right, auxiliary, insert, bus. And I'd be doing it all the time. And it was only when I was with my friend once that he sort of said to me, you know, you can just set up. So it's always there. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Because the other thing with me is that I tend to forget a whole lot of stuff. So there'd be a lot of time when I first started using Logic that I'd go, oh, right, set up a stereo, set up a bus. I go, right, I can't even remember how to do that. Right, point blank online. I just do that. Go into one of your things. Okay. I'll be doing every single day. So this is really good. It's time saving and it's amazing. My template now, particularly on my machine in the studio at home, the big one, it's great because it just loads up, and all the stuff that you're going to find yourself repeating yourself over and over again. It's all there. It's always going to be there, because not necessarily about writing techniques or even arrangement or programming or anything, but from a technical standpoint, I find anyway that I find myself doing the same thing, like just throwing this thing to a delay or compressing something in this type of way, because drums, unless you're recording live drums, I find that programming drums on here, I'll find that I'll kind of compress them in the same kind of way, you know what I mean? And it just saves you time, for like going, right, I'm doing the same thing over and over again. So yeah, that's that bit. So I got something in my eye. Did you want to ask me something? I think I just rabbit in a way, yeah?
No, you're doing super well, man. I'm really enjoying it.
Oh, thanks. He's like a good friend, and he's like, "You're doing all right."
Yeah,
So I've been at the doctors. You're all right. It's fine. Don't worry. I was like, "Crikey."
Have another sip of your
Yeah.
No, it sounds really
Does
good.
anyone else want to ask you anything while I'm going along?
Yeah, I want to ask you if you do, if you compress your bass.
I do. Yes.
Yeah.
I do. I tell you what I also do with my bass, depending on what type of record it is, which apparently you're not actually allowed to ever do, which is like put loads of effects on it. Like I put reverb on my bass sometimes, because to me it's one of those things where, you know, as long as it sounds really, really good, and going back to the analysation thing on the EQ, and it doesn't get in the way of anything, I kind of just quite like the idea of going, oh, well, this kind of sounds good to me, so let's just do it. I mean, I do loads of stuff that probably, you know, people in your course are telling people not to do, but yeah, I definitely, but like I said before, when I group stuff together, is that, you know, the kick will be over here, the drums will be here, what I call the rhythm section, which will be all the mid parts and stuff, they stay together, and the bass should be on her own as well, because I think that when you have the kick and the bass and the drums, those, regardless of how many musical stupid bits you've got in the middle, those three bits, they all need to talk to each other. Because if they don't, then that's to me is like the nuts and the bolts of a record, really, because it doesn't really matter what else you do over the top of it. I mean, I always use the same example of that King Brit remix of Josh 1. I mean, nothing happens in that record, but it's the best kick drum, that best clap snap I've ever heard in my life. You know what I mean? It's just that, and that bass line, is you could listen to that for 1,000 hours and nothing happens, but because those three elements are talking,
so well
it's you know, it's romantic if you're as weird as me.
How did you come across Kontakt anyway? Did somebody recommend it to you? Or?
I think it's just one of those things where, you know, when you're writing music for stuff and you sort of read magazines and stuff, you just kind of come across, I guess as same as DJ, people would probably go, you know, they'd come across, you know, Track to Scratch or whatever it was called, the first one. That's, you just kind of get it, you know. But to be honest with you, I had loads of problems when I very first used it, and I just wanted to, I hated it, because I could never get it to work. It was half, it was my machine wasn't really good, and the other half was it was just so big. But to be honest with you, what I really wanted to do was try and get away from using the standard Logic stuff. But what ended up happening in a weird way was I went totally the other way and got loads of stuff from Native Instruments. Got like Core and Kontakt and Mouse and Trousers and, you know, Kitchen Sink. I got all this stuff, and then I reconfigured my machine. My hard drive crashed, so I went and wiped my machine and went, okay, right, start again. So I reinstalled Logic, and I had some stuff that I had to finish. So I thought, well, I can't be bothered to reinstall all the Native Instruments stuff, so I'll wait. And I refound all the Logic stuff, and I was like, bloody hell, this stuff's brilliant. Because it is really good, because I think it's like anything, you kind of, you're frantically trying to use something that everyone else isn't, but you kind of tend to forget that it's really good. and it's like one of those things where the tools at your disposal, it's how you use them.
That's it,
you know,
man.
like the EXS24 now, I mean, I use that all the time. Even if it's loading in my own samples, like I'll record some drums and stuff and I stick it in there, and it, you know, it's fantastic. So yeah, I mean, again, like I say, it is, but it's like anything. It's just like all these different tools. If you can have as many at your disposal as possible. But again, but you know what? I'm kind of contradicting myself a little bit there. It could be a case where you have so much stuff that you never actually use any of them properly. You know, even my dad used to be a professional musician. He always used to say, at the end of the day, the best thing to do is get one drum kit, know that drum kit inside out, one set of cymbals, and as long as you know that inside out, then it's amazing. Rather than being, well, I'm kind of good on 3 different drum kits, and I could kind of play the bass. I'm all right on the xylophone, you know. I mean, it's that xylophone triangle. So you can see how good I am. You can see why I use a computer.
And so, how long did it take to actually do the track from beginning to end?
This one took me a while actually, because, like I say, I started with with the strings, and I think, to be honest with you, I think I put this one to one side. And I wrote the string, the arrangement, and the pads and all the musical side of it, and I left it. Because originally I thought I was going to maybe be like a TV piece of music, or it might have been an advert or something, because it sounds a bit OTT to play on a dance floor. So I think I put this to one side, and then when I started to do the balance thing, you know, the balance mix started. Originally, the balance mix wasn't meant to be as emotional as it turned out to be. Originally, it was going to be quite disco-y and funky and quite sort of. Yeah, it was meant to be quite nightclubby, but I did a few versions. One of my friends passed away, and I kind of got a little bit emotional about it, and I went back and just did a whole other thing. And when I did it, you know, I was like, right, I'm going to write 2 records to be on the mix. And one of them is quite sort of pumpy bit, and I thought, by the time I got to the end of the mix, I was like, oh, I just suddenly heard this record in my head. I was like, oh, I've still got that string section. So I pulled this out and went, oh yeah, that's great. Because as the mix goes on, and I mean, you'll hear it, but as the mix goes on towards the end, it starts to get a little bit
build up. Yeah.
You know, it's one of those, not one to listen to at 7 o'clock in the morning after Friday, because it's, it's definitely not a calm down record. So yeah, there was one other thing I wanted to just quickly touch on, which, and we haven't actually talked about any of the rhythm section, which is the drums. So, excuse me, again, surprise, surprise, I used Kontakt for this, but I used, for those people who don't know actually about Kontakt, this thing in Kontakt, which is amazing, which is this, in their factory library, they have this drum sequencer, which I totally and utterly came by mistake. One day, faffing around in there, there's a whole library of kicks and snaps and claps and snares and everything.
Nice one.
And then there's this performances option you have here. So if we can see, can you see this on the screen? Yeah. Yep. So we're just going to flip through these screen grabs because I'm sorry I don't have it on here. But you have these different options on here. So this is the drum kit thing. Then you obviously have the loop section here, so you can up, fade in, you can move it all around. You then have the groove box, which is fantastic, and then you have all the masters. So it's literally like having a drum machine.
Yeah, right there.
And you can load all your sounds in, and this drum, for the purposes of this, there's only one drum track on here, which sounds like this, which I know isn't very loud. That's on there. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but that one drum track is probably made up of, I think I put them in here actually somewhere. Oh, I did, yes. Here we go. It's made up of all these different... There's a kick in here. There's a perky bit in here. There's all of this stuff, which what I did on the drum machine was play one line and then put it to one side and record it in, play another line, record it all in, and then go and bounce it all in. So it ended up sounded like this with this little perky bit. And let's have a bit going with the drums. And then you have this little bit, and then obviously the kick. I can't actually remember where I got the kick from, to be honest. But going back to the rhythm bit. What I was going to do with this bass line actually is something I just remembered. What I was going to do with this bass line, because it hits right on the kick, what I was going to do was I thought it would be really good idea to try and sidechain this bass line so that when the kick hit, it kind of had a little bit of a, it gave a little bit more room and gave it a bit of a shape. But I started to do it and I realised that even though technically that's probably a really good thing to do, when I wanted the sound that I wanted to get, so actually I wanted the bass drum to kick on the kick drum, so it goes and I kind of quite like that abrasiveness of that rhythm, because everything over the top is going la ha la 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 la. I quite like the bottom bit just to go. Actually, you know what? I'm not giving room for no one. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's that bit. But again, I was talking about Kontakt. I know I've been talking about that a lot. So yeah, I don't know.
How's it been dropping when you've been playing it out?
I haven't actually played this out a lot, no, because I played it in Barcelona when I played New Year's Eve. I played it towards the end of my set on New Year's Eve. I'm not quite sure if it was the right time to play it, because there was a few kids sort of in front of me just kind of going, what? String music, what the hell? I was like, yeah, but I really love this record. The thing is about like writing music, it's a bit tricky because, like I was saying to you before, about I don't write records I don't write music for any other reason other than the fact that I love writing this music.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
whether it's this record or whether it's, you know, I don't know, I've just done a remix for Adam Shelton and Ash on One Records.
Sweet, have you?
This actually,
Oh, yeah.
I might actually play this to you actually.
Yeah, yeah,
Can I
yeah.
just put, I'm alright to put this on.
Is it the Hector...
Henry, what's his
Humphrey
chops?
Martinez. And,
Right, so this is a
yeah.
good example of like the total opposite of how I write records. So this nonsense that we've got here, which is a billion thousand layers of this record has probably got 2 bits in it. So this is, there's obviously the kick and the little bit of percussion and this one loop. So I'll just skip it because it's going forever. That's it for the whole record. Let's see what records I'm playing in there. Close this while we're doing it. I don't have it on this machine, so I can't show you the arrangement. Sorry.
Yeah, it's quality, man. I just got this today.
But again, this is like I said, the polar opposite to the other side. And that's it. Nothing else happens. But it's kind of one of those things where because I just write for me, it sounds very, very selfish. But because I write for me and I just write for that moment, you said this BTS record, I was like, oh, you know, But then, you know, that remix or the thing that I just did with Valerie June on Sunday Best, I mean, that is a very folky kind of thing, but it's just about that moment in time.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I was being very selfish, I think, was the long and the short of that particular piece. But it doesn't need to, and when it comes to the right music that I write, or music in general, I don't think it needs to be too much of one thing. It can be anything.
That's it, man.
You know.
I'm going to ask you some questions from the chat room if you're open.
I'm totally open.
Okay, cool. Did it take you a while to train your ears to hear the effects of your processing? I guess it would have done. I mean,
yeah, it's a lot of trial and error. I think I sat for a long time. I sat down and read a lot and tried to learn as much as I possibly could. There's a lot of friends of mine that were really, really helpful. Excuse me, early on. Because I mean, I was never really super into writing music on a computer ever. So, and the technical aspect of it has always been really, really frustrating because there's nothing worse than kind of going, oh, it's amazing, and then going, and the computer goes, oh no, you can't do that because you haven't plugged this, and it drives you mental. So there was a lot of trial and error, but it was definitely one of those things that once I kind of got there, or once you kind of know, then it's almost like, okay, well, that's kind of what I wanted. Like I was saying before about when you're in your mixer screen, is you love that little stereo delay. I mean, I use it all the time just to bleed through breaks and stuff, and little delay designer effects. Because that's kind of, that kind of makes me feel happy on you. Because I think that's the only thing you can do is kind of go, oh, well, that's what makes it sound nice to me, as long as, you know, it's not horrendous. Sometimes it probably could be. So, yes is the answer. Yes, it did take me a long time in this short scene.
how long do you reckon it took you?
Up till now, I'd probably say.
Yeah,
I think so, for sure. Processing drums and rhythm, I think, was a lot quicker because you can really, really hear the effects of processing drum tracks properly. Because if you listen to, you know, it's like if you go into your drums and you go into your drum bus, as if you play it with your processing on and you play with it off, then you can really hear it. But again, for me, it has always been very much about tweaking because I'm not a technical person. I've never been to a school. You know, I've never really learned. I've read about it and I've tried to learn, but at the same time, a lot of it, I'm a very impatient person. I can't sit for hours and kind of watch, you know, you're as much as I'm probably sure they're amazing, but I can't sit and watch tutorials for 20 minutes. I don't have the attention span. I can't sit and read a Logic manual. I physically go, I'm like, oh, get on with it, and I'll just try and mess it up on my own. So it has always been very much a hands-on, make it up as you go along thing with a little bit of, you know, YouTube guidance.
Sweet, man. Well, it seems to be working out for you pretty well, doesn't it?
No, I don't know. It depends. I kind of like the way things are sounding now.
Yeah.
But again, it's always, for me, writing music, as far as I'm concerned, is always just a continual thing, because, you know, I wrote a record recently. I did a remix of someone recently, which I won't mention what it is, but I listened back to it on the airplane the other day and I thought, shit, this sounds like something I did 5 years ago. This is bloody awful. But I kind of quite like that sometimes you get a punch in the face. You go, actually, you thought you were all right. You're not. Don't think you can just swan in and do whatever you want, because every so often you kind of go, oh no, I'm actually really shit. You need to concentrate. You know, you can't just turn out and go, nah. You know, you need to. Well, at least I do anyway. You need to keep abreast.
Everyone needs to slip up once in a while, don't they?
Yeah, I think so.
What's your favourite EQ plugin or piece of gear?
EQ wise, I mean, I've got the UAD stuff at home, which I adore. The wave stuff I use quite a lot. I mean, I kind of messed up a little bit there. I don't know if you know about the wave stuff. I spent an inordinate amount of money on them because my friend has this great big studio, and he was like, "Oh, you got it! These are so amazing!" And I was like, "Oh yeah." Spent money on them when I probably could have been naughty and borrowed them off someone. You know, they're so amazing. That on my £1,000 Adam speakers in the studio, they don't really make a difference. So, you know, I don't really actually ever use them anymore. But I love the EQs and I love the compression here on Logic, only because I think I've been so used to how I'm getting them to how I sound. Because just very simple things like the ratio and the threshold is that I kind of get that feel now where I can kind of go, oh, that's how I want it to feel.
You find it quite intuitive now.
Yeah, for sure. But I guess that's only, people will probably, I mean, Claude Van Stroke would probably say the same thing about, you know, Ableton. It's just like going back to what I was saying before, it's just knowing one thing and knowing it and getting the result that you actually need. So,
yeah, for sure.
Not that I'm saying Waves plugins are rubbish, but they're probably really amazing. They're just too cool for me.
I just don't know how to use them.
They're too good for me, I'm sorry. So if anyone wants to buy any Waves plugins, by the way. It's a joke, by the way, Waves.
Anyone in the audience got any questions?
Do you use Ableton as well?
I do use Ableton, yeah.
What do you use it for?
Ableton, I actually used Ableton before I used Logic. So I had Ableton 3 or 4, I think, a long time ago, 2003, maybe a bit after that. I used that to try and get into you know, learning how to actually write records on a computer. But then, you know, with all due respect to them, I just could never get it to sound right, and it never really worked for me. So I switched to Logic. But I still use it now. There are certain things that I rewire. You know, you can rewire Ableton into Logic. So there are some things where, if, for example, I'm searching for an idea and I'm here and I'm going and I'm just looping something and I'm trying to get something, I'll rewire Ableton behind Logic, and I'll grab something either from an old project that's at a totally different tempo, or I'll grab a sample, or I'll grab something just to chuck it in, just to sort of give my brain a bit of a, you know, a creative kick in the bum, because, you know, sometimes you can be sat here and you can kind of go, okay, well, yeah, we're 2 days in now, and not being funny, but it's kind of running a little bit slower, because again, like I say, I've got a very, very short attention span, so unless I fall in love with something very, very quickly, then I tend to kind of go, oh man, do you know what, mate, me and you are over.
Yeah, forget that.
But yeah, I still really, I struggle to write music on the road. I'm useless at it because I use my MIDI keyboard for absolutely everything, from playing my drums and my piano and everything. So I really, really struggle on the road. But recently, I've been using Ableton with a really rubbish little tiny Korg. Is it a Korg Micro thing? I mean, it's about as big as a toothbrush, and it's hilarious. I've been using Ableton for that because it's very, very quick and very easy to get sketches and get ideas down. But if I do come up with that, in fact, you know, the thing that I did for Sunday Best, actually, that's the remix that I did for them, started out in Ableton, because they sent me the audio, and as you know, Ableton is so quick to just chuck ideas in and just get it going. Because
that's what a lot of people say, isn't it, about Ableton? It's really good for just.
But that's the only thing. I don't know whether it's because, excuse me, I'm not proficient enough on Logic or whatever. But just the audio version of what Logic do. I can't get her to be as spontaneous as Logic, even with the new flex time function in. You know, it's like, it seems very laborious just to try and get a piece of audio and go, right, that's not the same tempo, but look, work it out. And Logic kind of goes, well, I will, but wait, let's talk about this. You know, whereas Ableton's like, I just chuck it in, mate. I don't give a shit. Like, come on, let's just get on with it. You know, she's like the party girl, whereas Logic, she's the wife. I don't know, mate. Is this the right idea for us? You want to use this? And you're a bit like, I don't want your opinion, babe. I just want you to get on with it.
Spoken like a true rogue.
Yeah, I know that sounds a bit sexist. It wasn't actually meant to be that sexist, but so yes, in the answer, yeah, I do, and I love it, and I'm actually really looking forward to what they're doing with Ableton 9, only because they have promised that they're going to sort the audio engine out in it, which is the only thing I think for me. And again, I don't know whether it's because I'm just not very good on it, but you know, I was writing a record recently with my friend in Berlin, and he only ever uses Ableton, and he's come from big bands writing in Pro Tools, so he's super technical pro, but he only ever uses Ableton, but he has to process the crap out of everything to try and get it together, whereas with her, I don't know why it is, and like I said, I don't know whether it's because I just don't know, but with Logic, I can do the same thing in Logic that I do in Ableton, and I just go, oh yeah, no, that, you know, it just sounds good.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's the way it works, though,
yeah.
isn't it? Do you get stuck when you're making tracks, and if so, how do you sort of get past through the wall?
I get stuck all the time. I got stuck at 2 o'clock this afternoon before I came in here. I got stuck with a vocal. What I have recently been doing is leaving it. What used to happen before was when I would get stuck, because I'm quite stubborn, I'd be like, you and I are going to sit here until this is done. So whether it's 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, I'd sit down and battle it out. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it wouldn't. But now I've got to a point where I've started to go, okay, well, look, this isn't working for now. You and I are not getting on. So let's just leave it. And then I'll go away and work on something else. Or go and do the washing up or something. And 9 times out of 10, what happens with me is that if I'm humming the record that I'm getting stuck on, or I'm singing a part of the thing and I'm going, sorting the cat out, I'm like, that's that thing. And then I'll go back and do it, because I think what can happen is if you're looking at these lovely all colour-coded blocks for hours, you're going, I hate you. You know, you're not going to get anywhere. So. And
you're straining to get it out. You're like,
yeah, and the thing is that. I used to think, when I first started writing music, I used to think that it was so beautiful and so romantic that there was no way it could be painful. There's no way. And it was only after I really started writing music that I spend a lot of time with my father, who's written loads of music, and I started to talk to him about writing music. Did he say, look, this is not all sunshine and roses. There's going to be times when you're banging your head against a brick wall. There's going to come a time when something's going to fall out of the sky by complete fluke, and you're going to be like, shit, I didn't even mean to do that, and it's going to change the whole record. So, again, it can just be anything. You know, it can be amazing sometimes and awful like in others, but
That's the beauty of music, eh?
I know, that's what it's like drugs, isn't it? That's why you're totally addicted to it. You just never know what you're going to get. Or was that chocolate? Sorry, it's chocolate.
Or Tiger beer.
Yeah, thanks.
And just as we're finishing up, can you just let people know what tracks you've got coming up, anything that's scheduled for release or things?
Well, that remix I actually just played you for One Records, which is Adam Shelton and my good mate Saban's label. I don't know when that's going to be out, but you've got it, so I guess it's probably on its way out at some point.
Within the next month or so, I think.
And then I have an EP which is called Under the Thumb.
Oh, yeah.
This is a really good one with an amazing vocalist that I've just started working with, a girl called Jenny. So there's a 3-track EP on it, and then something for Left Room, which is going to be boom, 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 club music.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
Nice one. Well, thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much. Cheers, thanks for having me.
Lovely having you here. Don't forget, everyone that's tuned in, subscribe to our channel for more great tutorials like this, and we'll see you again for another masterclass. Thanks for tuning in.